Superman 2025 has officially dropped, and though the reviews and box office results have been mostly positive thus far, it's no secret that many folks still yearn for the days of old when Zack Snyder was steering the ship instead of James Gunn. In the build-up to, during the opening weekend of, and the following weeks since the release of Superman 2025, the most hotly debated topic on social media has been whether it or Man of Steel is the superior movie. So let's break it down and find out who truly is the brightest beacon of hope. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today I have a brand new versus video for you all, and it is going to be Superman 2025 versus Man of Steel. For those of you who are unfamiliar with how I do these videos, it's simple. I will be comparing these two movies across 9 rounds to determine just one winner. Each round is timestamped, so if some categories interest you more than others, feel free to skip around. Before I hop into the actual showdown itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my versus videos. There are plenty of versus videos in that playlist for you to enjoy, from movie versus movie, character versus character, or franchise versus franchise, and more. So if versus videos are your thing, then be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And if by some chance you don't, then feel free to suggest something you might like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Round 1 is the plot, or the base plot. So in this round we look at the base plot of the movie, and nothing more, considering things like what is the hook to get people into theaters or to click on the icon on the streaming service of their choice after reading the description. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who doesn't recognize Superman. He's a global icon and one of the most instantly identifiable figures in human history. Though many may not know his generally agreed upon origins as well as others, most folks who know the character have at least an idea of who he is, where he comes from, and what he's all about. Superman 2025 leans on this heavily and decides not to give us yet another origin story, and instead throws us right into the mix with a Year 3 Superman who just lost his first battle. The most basic overview of the plot is that we follow Superman 3 weeks after stopping the fictional nation of Boravia from invading a neighboring country. In doing so, the world now has an altered view on superheroes, known as metahumans here, and how closely they should be kept under watch by governing bodies. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor does everything he can to sway the world's view of the alien in his favor. Man of Steel, on the other hand, is sort of a combination between the original Superman movie from 1978 and Superman 2. The story chronicles both Kal-El's departure from Krypton before its destruction, his upbringing as Clark Kent, and eventually his becoming Superman when Earth is threatened by surviving Kryptonians who seek to wipe out the human race to create a new Krypton. I think both of these movies are very much of their time. Man of Steel was a fresh start meant to kick off a new cinematic universe that clearly takes inspiration from the Dark Knight trilogy and the MCU at the time. I mean, the way the story rolls out, balancing the origin with the modern conflict, is so similar to Batman Begins, it's practically uncanny. While Superman 2025 was conceived in a world greatly affected by superhero fatigue, knowing they couldn't possibly tell another origin story. So they took things in a different direction, knowing that most of the target audience are already well aware of who characters like Superman, Lois Lane, and Lex Luthor are, so they didn't need their hand held and could be thrown into a story already in motion. Some folks prefer to see Man of Steel's new take on a familiar origin story, while others were happy that Superman 2025 didn't force them to sit through the destruction of Krypton once again. Personally, I was thrilled with the direction both of these movies took in their respective release years. In 2013, I was okay with the Superman origin story, as the hero had been out of the spotlight for so long. But by the time July 2025 rolled around, the last thing I needed was to see a full 120 minutes of Superman's origin again. So it's pretty tough to definitively say which I prefer because they're from completely different eras. But since I can't cop out and call it a tie, I have to say I was more excited to see Zack Snyder's bold new vision for a character who only truly had his origin done justice once before on the big screen than I was for DC's second fresh start in 10 years or so. Don't get me wrong, I was hyped for Superman 2025 and was so relieved when Gunn confirmed it wasn't an origin story. But as someone who was, at the time, not a huge fan of the character and found the '78 movie too old and cheap looking to enjoy, remember I was like 14 when Man of Steel came out, plus a huge fan of Snyder's, Man of Steel couldn't release fast enough. So this first round will go to Man of Steel's dual origin plot strategy. Round 2 is going to be the storytelling. The storytelling round basically covers everything else related to the story and how it all plays out. I'll talk about pacing, themes, and messages, what the movie is a commentary on, the twists and turns, subversions, the ending / resolution, and anything else I feel is worth mentioning to better help flesh this round out. James Gunn was very upfront from the get-go on what this movie is about. He has continued to reiterate that his Superman is a story about human kindness, hope, and the challenge of maintaining your integrity and beliefs when everything you know is brought into question. The pacing is breakneck. The movie clocks in at 129 minutes and only 118 when you take out the credits and post-credit scenes. Though I found the first 30 minutes or so to be a little rough and choppy, the movie definitely hits its stride once everyone has something to do and it all starts to come together. As for twists and turns, Superman 2025 didn't have many we didn't already expect. Spoiler warning once again for those of you who skipped the little graphic at the beginning, but we knew Ultraman was going to be a Superman clone. Everyone figured Lex was behind things like the Hammer of Boravia and the giant kaiju. We knew Metamorpho was going to create kryptonite. We all had a good hunch that Supergirl would appear in the movie. We knew about the pocket universes, and so on. The only thing that surprised people was the rest of Jor-El's message, where his parents basically told him to rule over the world and make a new Krypton by taking as many wives as he could manage. The resolution to the story and setup for the future, however, were brilliant in my mind. The ending moments with the videos of him growing up with the Kents, the hints at a larger universe that includes the likes of Peacemaker, Supergirl, the Justice Gang, and beyond, plus where things ended with him and Lex, all worked magnificently for me. Man of Steel comes in a bit longer than its 2025 counterpart, with a runtime of 143 minutes. I, personally, have always found Man of Steel to be superbly well-paced, offering a fantastic balance of flashbacks, over-the-top action set pieces, minor world building, and fleshing out Clark as a character. With both movies focusing on the same characters, it should come as no surprise that there's some overlap in the themes, like hope being at the core of the House of El. That's just a Superman thing. But with Man of Steel being an origin story, it leans more into the themes of identity, responsibility, choice, faith, and ultimately the burden of such immeasurable power. Though the movie offers very little in the way of twists and turns, there's not really a single thing I can think of that could be considered a subversion, a twist, or a turn. But that's also okay in my mind, because the movie was trying to lay the foundation for a new universe. It was merely acting as a base for what was to come, a straightforward origin story that would establish the tone of the upcoming shared cinematic universe. The resolution has always been exceptional to me. Yes, I am a defender of the Zod neck snap. What else was he going to do with this guy? He straight up states that he'll never stop and that Supes will have to kill him. Either you die or I do. Like, do people think Zod was going to give up, surrender, retreat? Not a chance. The fight would have gone on until one of them died, and so many innocent people would have died along with whoever went out. I love Clark just starting at the Daily Planet, I love that he's officially taking on the mantle of Superman, and again, the final fight is just the best. So big, so epic, so hard-hitting, I adore it and always have. It's a tough one because Superman 2025 has more introspective themes. I think that's the right word anyway. It asks its audience to look inward and question ourselves, our decisions, and how we can be better people and do our part to make the world a better place. Man of Steel goes with a wider, more philosophical scope, giving Superman an almost mythical aura, with many religious allegories. It's Russell Crowe delivered monologues about human existence and Superman being a guiding force, what it means to belong, as well as questions of identity and purpose. I enjoyed both movies' pacing, themes, resolutions, and basically everything else that could be included in this round. While they follow the same characters and cover many of the same things, their approaches are radically different. So it comes down to which tone you prefer. Snyder's more serious and grandiose take, or Gunn's sillier, more upbeat and hopeful approach. Again, both movies are very much of their time. I think both movies succeeded and were great at what they aimed to do and be. It's so tough for me because I love both, which you will hear me say time and time again in this video, but since I have to go with just one, I do prefer Man of Steel's pacing ever so slightly, since I don't think it feels overstuffed during its first 30 minutes or so, and the final fight is marginally larger in scale and far more intense, so I'll also be giving this second round to Man of Steel. Round 3 is gonna be the lead characters. In this round, I focus on the lead characters from each movie. As often happens when I do these movie versus movie videos, people sometimes have differing opinions as to what separates a lead or main character and a supporting character. But that's not what I'm really here to debate. As the one making the video, I have to use my best judgment to make a call as to who belongs where, and this is where I ended up. For Superman 2025, I decided to go with the big three: Clark/Superman, Lois Lane, and Lex Luthor. For Man of Steel, I've gone with Clark/Superman again, Lois Lane again, and I think he's in it enough to also include Michael Shannon's General Zod. It's no secret that there is a massive divide in the DC fanbase right now. After Zack Snyder's Man of Steel and Batman v Superman received mixed to negative reviews, Warner Brothers took the opportunity to impose their will on every DCEU movie moving forward, tampering with 2016's Suicide Squad, ripping Justice League away from Snyder amid a family tragedy, and not knowing which characters they wanted to place at the forefront or what direction they wanted to take things in. So when the DCEU, or the Snyderverse, was pronounced dead and WB announced that James Gunn and Peter Safran were taking over to reboot everything, die-hard fans of Snyder's and his vision for DC were outraged, many of which remain hopelessly outraged at this very moment. So when David Corenswet was announced as the new Superman only a short while after Black Adam teased the return of Cavill, he was met with a very vocal wave of hatred and disdain. He had some large boots, cape, and trunks to fill. Plus, in the eyes of many, he had a massive hill to climb, as the general public had seemingly lost all interest, if not straight up all faith in DC as a brand. The online bashing seemed less directed at Brosnahan's Lois and Holt's Lex, and that's on both sides. Trust me, I know there's a ton of Snyder hate out there too, and it's just crazy, but that's all I'm going to say about that, so let's move on. To make a long story short, Corenswet crushed it. He not only delivered, he over-delivered in my eyes. A perfect Superman and a perfect Clark Kent, even if I would have liked more Clark in the movie. He was charming, appropriately corny, his heart was always in the right place, and he played the dual role so effortlessly. The quirky oddball Clark and the heroic well-meaning Superman who takes the extra time to save a squirrel. As Clark, he maintains friendships and is putting in the legwork to make people take him seriously as a reporter. As Superman, he does everything he possibly can to ensure the safety of innocent people around the world. That is his top priority, as shown numerous times throughout the movie. I also love how he still has a lot of uncertainty and self-doubt, especially as the movie further progresses and the true intentions of his birth parents are revealed. Like he says in the movie, he is as human as anyone. He loves, he gets scared, he wakes up every morning and despite not knowing what to do, he puts one foot in front of the other and tries to make the best choices he can. He screws up all the time, but that is being human, and that is his greatest strength, both the character and Corenswet's portrayal of the character or characters. He's only a year 3 Superman, so he's still got a long way to go, but he's learning each and every day. As for Lois and Lex, without a shred of a doubt in my mind, Rachel Brosnahan and Nicholas Hoult are by far the best on-screen portrayals, at least when it comes to the movies for all you Smallville fans out there, that we've ever had. Exponentially better than every other film version that came before. Not to mention, both of their chemistry with Corenswet was off the charts. Enough said. Cavill's Clark and Superman made me fall in love with the character. Like I said in my ranking video, I was never a big Superman fan growing up. I was a Batman fan through and through, and only passively consumed Superman content. The only time I cared about the character was in the Justice League animated series, and even then he was probably like my least or second least favorite character on the team. I just always found him to be so boring. Man of Steel changed all of that. Cavill just brought something so damn special to the role. His portrayal made me appreciate the character like never before and actually made me go back and watch a swath of Superman content with a new perspective. And for that, I am forever indebted to his run as the character. Though there's not as much of a divide between his Clark and Superman, in fact, this time around it really does look like only the glasses separate them, I love his take on both. He's far more conflicted, not as serious as some people make him out to be, and tries his best to balance everything he's been taught and all that he's still learning. He is quite literally carrying the weight and fate of the world on his shoulders, and he's a day one Superman. I don't envy the positions he finds himself in, the choices he has to make, or the destruction left in the wake of his battle, which of course leads to consequences in the follow-up movies. Sure, he could have done more to at least look like he was trying to protect people during the final battle, but again, this dude has been a lone wanderer, and then all of a sudden he's tasked with fighting an extraterrestrial superhuman military, so cut him some slack. Amy Adams is fine as Lois Lane. She's a phenomenal actress, unbelievable in fact, and one of the best to ever do it in my opinion. But as Lois, I found her rather dull and boring. It didn't seem like she cared, and I found her and Cavill had virtually no chemistry anytime they were together. Michael Shannon, on the other hand, I freaking love as Zod. I think Michael Shannon is easily among the most underrated actors of the last couple of decades, and his role as Zod in this movie remains my favorite of all the DCEU villains. He's menacing, has incredible lines and line delivery, plus he's fully committed to the bit. The Supermen are on par for me, and the villains are pretty neck and neck too, but Brosnahan's Lois blows Amy's out of the water. Alongside the chemistry shared between Corenswet, Brosnahan, and Hoult, I'll be giving this round to Superman 2025. Round 4, Supporting Characters. Just like the last round, I'll be looking at the characters and the actors' performances here. I obviously won't be touching on every single other character in the movies because that's just absurd. They have to have at least a little agency in the story or some moments worth mentioning. Superman 2025 offers up a few other metahumans, like Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner, Eddie Gethge's Mr. Terrific, Isabella Merced's Hawkgirl, and Anthony Kerrigan's Metamorpho. We also have others from the Daily Planet crew like Skylar Gizondo's Jimmy Olsen and Wendell Pierce's Perry White, plus Ma and Pa Kent, played by Neva Howell and Pruitt Taylor Vince. And finally, the villain's side, which includes Sarah Sampaio as Eve Tessmacher, Maria Gabriela de Faria, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as the engineer, and finally the mysterious Ultraman. There are some others that could be included here, but they're not important enough to the story or aren't in the movie enough for me to care about including them. Man of Steel has the other Kryptonians like Feora, played by Anshe Trau, which I'm probably also horrendously mispronouncing, and Nam Ek. Clark's parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, played by Kevin Costner and Diane Lane, Jor-El, played by Russell Crowe, the Daily Planet crew such as Lawrence Fishburne's Perry White, Michael Kelly's Steve Lombard, and Rebecca Buller's Jenny. And finally, the military crew consisting predominantly of Harry Lennox's General Swanwick, Christopher Maloney's Colonel Nathan Hardy, and Richard Schiff's Dr. Emil Hamilton. though there are definitely some characters and performances I prefer in Man of Steel, like Costner and Lane as the Kents, plus Lawrence Fishburne's Perry White and Michael Kelly's Steve Lombard. The ensemble just gels together so much better in the 2025 version, and I really don't think there's a bad performance. I loved the Justice Gang, I loved Jimmy Olsen, I loved Eve, the Engineer was insanely cool, Ultraman was a constant mystery throughout, at least for a lot of people who don't chronically live online, and though they only really have like 2 scenes in the movie, I did love this movie's version of the Kents too. Just sweet old-fashioned farmers with hearts of gold. Feora and Nam Ek, meh, nothing really there. Like, Feora's cool. Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, I definitely prefer his version, but it's so tough. Like, I go back and forth on this one, but again, since I have to choose just one, it's so tough because, again, you're talking about Diane Lane, Kevin Costner, and Russell Crowe, but it's not talking about the actors themselves, it's talking about their roles, their part, their performances in that specific movie. Another round goes to Superman 2025. Round 5 is going to be direction, cinematography, editing, stunt work, and so on. This round primarily focuses on the direction, but of course that comes in many different forms and styles. It includes the work of Snyder and Gunn, the cinematographers, the editors, and the stunt coordinators / choreographers, when applicable. Though James Gunn had been working in the industry for quite some time, he didn't become a household name or known to general audiences until 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy. Since then, he's become pretty widely known as one of the best comic book filmmakers out there, gifting us with the likes of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, 2021's The Suicide Squad, and the television shows Peacemaker and Creature Commandos, each of which is critically acclaimed and or financially successful. Not too long ago, it was announced that he was the new co-CEO of DC, and he himself shared the news that he would be writing and directing a new Superman movie to kick this universe off. Sure, not everyone is a fan of his style, as admittedly a lot of his work does feel the same. Team-ups between quirky, offbeat characters, plenty of childish humor, and bright colors, but also deep and personal themes, heartfelt moments, incredible needle drops, and lovable characters. Superman is no different. All of that is true here too, and me personally, although again I do recognize that a lot of his stuff feels the same, I'm not sick of it yet. In fact, I love it. I love the 3 Guardians movies, I love the Suicide Squad, and I love his work here. The cinematography and editing is where things get a bit murky. Superman's cinematographer is Henry Braum, the same cinematographer as The Flash, which is very evident throughout portions of this movie. That being said, he's also the cinematographer responsible for Guardians 2, 3, and the Suicide Squad, and that is also super obvious because those movies are mostly stunning. So there's a bit of both in here. Sometimes they went with those gross, way too close, fake-looking fisheye lenses, and other times the movie is gorgeous. The same goes for the editing. We have some beautifully shot and edited sequences with seamless transitions that are smooth as butter. Other times, the camera work is jarring and the editing does it no favors, with close-ups and quick cuts that make it hard to follow the action or the focal point of the sequence. Though I will say I personally found the stunt work, choreography, and so on to be stellar. The fights were great, the flying sequences, the big battles, all that jazz just hit the spot for me. It's no secret that Zack Snyder is a polarizing director, always has been. He debuted with a remake of the iconic Dawn of the Dead, which led to anger fans petitioning to get it cancelled, and things just never got less divided from there. Whether it was his original work like Sucker Punch, or his many adaptations like 300, Watchmen, and of course, Man of Steel. There has always been a clear divide in the reception to his work. Some say he's a one-of-a-kind visionary, others say he's all style, no substance. Personally, I'm somewhere in the middle. I love all of his adapted work. Dawn of the Dead 2004, if you count that, 300, Watchmen, Man of Steel, BVS, the Ultimate Edition, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Love him. His original work, Sucker Punch, Rebel Moon, Army of the Dead, range from mediocre at best to straight garbage. But like I just said literally 2 seconds ago, his adaptations, including Man of Steel, I adore. His work here makes me lean more towards the visionary perspective of his career. from the grand scale, the epic battles, the unforgettable sequences like the first flight, or the fully realized version of Krypton, and this mythical approach to the character and lore. It's all superb in my humble opinion. The cinematography here is simply breathtaking. I can't think of a single bad shot in the movie. The whole portion on Krypton, the fight scenes, the world engine destruction, the first flight, the flashbacks, all of it is magnificent. Same goes for the editing. Not once did I ever feel like I was missing anything. Never did I feel like there was a rough or wonky transition. And then lastly, the stunt work, choreography, and everything related to those are also brilliant. Zero complaints, no notes. The Smallville fight and the final fight between Supes and Zod are easily among my favorite fight scenes in comic book movie history. And if you ask me, this is exactly how Superman fights should be going down. Given the strength of Superman and his rogues gallery, all of this destruction, the shockwaves, the combination of hand-to-hand and flight combat, it's all ripped straight from the comics and animation, and it is perfectly executed here. Though Superman 2025 has some immaculate work, it is admittedly inconsistent. The direction from both Gunn and Snyder are top tier. This is both of these dudes at the height of their power, and the choreography and direction of the fight scenes are top notch. It's the cinematography and editing where they start to diverge, and so I'll have to give this round to Man of Steel. Round 6, Aesthetic, Style, and Visuals. In this round, we take the time to appreciate the work of the costume and set designers alongside the makeup and visual effects artists. Let's try to simplify this one as much as possible. Costumes, easy edge to Superman 2025. I do love Snyder and his team's take on Superman's suit, the story behind it, and so on, but the coloring of the movie sucks all of the energy out of it. Same with the Kryptonians. Love the design of their suits, their ships, and Krypton as a whole, but the color palette makes it all feel so muted, dark, and drab. There's just no punch, you know what I mean? Superman 2025, on the other hand, feels ripped straight from the comic book pages. Supes has his iconic red trunks back, and it just works. The Justice Gang and their suits, exceptional. The Daily Planet crew, Ultraman, the Engineer, Lex, Eve, the Kents, all of it is spectacular. Same thing for the sets. I love the vision they had for Man of Steel. Again, inside the Kryptonian ships, on Krypton, Clark's childhood home. All of it is so well designed, but the colors suck all the life out of them. I appreciate the artistic work and the very clear, distinct approach, but it comes off so flat. 2025 gives us the likes of the Fortress of Solitude, Inside the Daily Planet, the Pocket Universe, the In Progress Hall of Justice, and just an overall more vibrant and bustling city. Makeup, I'd also go 2025, but visuals, I'd probably side with Man of Steel on. I think even today, Man of Steel is unmatched in a lot of ways when it comes to the visuals. The destruction of Metropolis, the way Superman flies, the fidelity of everything, it's genuinely mind-blowing how well it holds up. Granted, that's still only one section we consider for this round going to Man of Steel, with the rest going to Superman 2025. So the overall winner for this round is Superman 2025. Round 7 is gonna be sound and music. Throughout this round, I'll be discussing the movie's score, soundtrack, sound design, and sound mixing. For the soundtrack, the obvious choice is Superman 2025. Like I mentioned earlier, James Gunn is right up there at the peak with the likes of Edgar Wright as the king of needle drops. Each of his movies and shows have incomparable soundtracks and introduced or reintroduced audiences to so many gems. The rest, however, easily goes to Man of Steel. Though I loved the work done in blending the iconic John Williams score with new elements for Superman 2025. In fact, I've listened to the score countless times already. And by no means does the movie have bad or even mediocre sound design and mixing. In fact, it's all pretty darn good. Man of Steel's is just otherworldly. Hans Zimmer's composing here might be the best of his legendary career. In fact, this man is my all-time favorite composer. I listen to his stuff pretty regularly, and his work on Man of Steel is simply remarkable. The sound design and sound mixing is some of the best in the industry. Between the flight sequences, the action, mixing the dialogue with all of the chaos, and music, it rarely gets much better than the work done here. So this is going to be an easy round win for Man of Steel. Round 8, or our wildcard round, is the universe setup. It's important to remember that everything in this video, like all art, is subjective. Whether we're talking about movies, TV, video games, whatever, it's up to the individual to decide what they like and don't like. But I feel this rings true especially so for this round, what I like to call my wildcard round. This round changes on a video-by-video basis, and given both of these movies were in the unique position to kickstart brand new shared cinematic universes, I felt it was most appropriate to cover that. Like I mentioned in the storytelling round, each of these movies took wildly different approaches to kicking off their respective universes. For Zack Snyder's DCEU, he went with a Superman origin story with his follow-up movies spinning off from there, primarily focusing on the fallout from the Superman and Zod fight. James Gunn's DCU, no E, decided to throw us right into the mix with no safety net. Metahumans have been around and known to the world for 300 years, and we follow a third-year Superman taking on his greatest challenge yet. Both movies are also very much of their time. Man of Steel dropped when superhero movies were just really starting to take off. The Avengers and The Dark Knight Rises only dropped the year before, and both made over $1 billion. So the fatigue many people feel now was at least a good decade off, and we hadn't had a Superman movie since 2006's Superman Returns. James Gunn was challenged with revitalizing the DC brand in a post-COVID, streaming-heavy and comic book movie oversaturated landscape. And again, like I've mentioned multiple times, people's idea of DC wasn't in the best spot. Snyder's approach was to keep it simple, an origin story for one of the world's most iconic and instantly recognizable fictional characters. From there, Batman v Superman saw the two heroes collide in the aftermath of Man of Steel's ending. It also introduced Wonder Woman and lazily planted seeds for the other Justice League members. Up until mostly everything went to shit with 2017's Justice League, the DCEU movie stayed in line with Snyder's vision and style, with his version of Justice League eventually seeing the light of day and showing us that much of Snyder's now deceased plans for the universe stemmed from Man of Steel and what would go on to be known as the Black Zero event. James Gunn's approach was to really hammer home the idea that although this is very much a Superman-focused movie, he isn't the only hero. In fact, what this movie really is just us following Superman during this particular time period, as this universe is vast and has many, many things in motion, essentially wanting to emphasize that this story is just one of many, and future stories will take place before these events, alongside these events, and long after. There is no cataclysmic event that sets everything into motion. This is just one of the countless adventures this Superman has already been or has yet to go on. In doing so, some other things like Creature Commandos, Peacemaker, and probably the Suicide Squad from 2021 are already canon. The Justice Gang didn't have to be introduced, Superman already knows them and they know him. Supergirl pops in for just a second, but we already knew her movie was on the way. By the time we get to characters like Batman, Wonder Woman, and so on, I expect the same thing. No more origin stories, just interesting stories being pulled from the world of these versions of these characters. So I'd like to reiterate that I loved Snyder's vision at the time. Seeing a Day One Superman taking on this impossible battle and the very grounded, real-world-esque consequences that follow his actions and decisions was genius. I love Man of Steel and how seamlessly it led into the opening and conflict within Batman v Superman, and how the repercussions of all that took place in that movie then led to Zack Snyder's Justice League. But going in that direction wasn't super friendly to other movies that were meant to expand this universe. Outside of origin stories like Wonder Woman, it's clearer now more than ever that Zack had his 5-film plan, and that was really it. He wasn't too concerned with much else. Superman, on the other hand, is meant to usher us into a world where things are already in motion, thus giving the creatives working at DC Studios the opportunity to tell the stories they want to tell without any need to adhere to a singular event or strict timeline, at least as of right now. And so I'll have to give this round to Superman 2025. And round 9 is memorability, originality, and uniqueness. So for our 9th and final round, I'll be focusing on each movie's memorability, originality, and uniqueness. Which one of these do I find to be more original, more unique, and all around more memorable? Superman 2025 once again had the gargantuan task of doing everything it possibly could to separate itself from everything else we'd seen from DC since 2013, from everything Marvel had been doing for nearly 20 years, and find a way to connect with audiences in an extremely hostile environment. What we got may not have been the most original or unique movie, or even the most original or unique comic book movie, but it definitely stands apart in a lot of ways from what we've seen from DC, especially over the last decade plus. It is, however, very similar to what we've grown to know and love James Gunn for. If you're a fan of his Guardians of the Galaxy movies and 2021's Suicide Squad, then you'll feel right at home here. If you're not a fan of his previous efforts, this one won't win you over. What we do get here, though, is a colorful, vibrant, cheerful, and traditional take on the character. It really goes back to the character's roots, focusing almost solely on his kindness, charming naivety, and undying lust to do the right thing. His mission is to protect innocent people, harmless animals, and minimize destruction. What makes the movie more unique and memorable is Gunn's desire to dive into some of the lesser-known areas of DC's lore, including characters, concepts, and locations. We follow the likes of Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, Metamorpho, and the Engineer. We get to meet the Superman robots in their, truest, most traditional form. We explore the idea of pocket universes, and visit locations such as Boravia and Yarenpur. Plus, who could possibly forget Crypto the Superdog? That's what separates Gunn's vision from anything that came before. With Man of Steel, Zack Snyder brought his signature style to DC. A darker, grittier, more stylized take on the iconic figure. A very blue, black, and gray color palette, more grounded, almost horror-like story beats at times, a whole new take on the Superman suit and Krypton, by far the biggest, most bombastic action we've ever seen in a live-action DC movie at that point, and in many ways, a much more modern, larger-than-life take. The heavy involvement and scrutiny of the US military and government, the many religious allegories, making Superman this very godlike mythical figure, and then obviously, since I gushed about it already, the immaculate score from Hans Zimmer that just brings everything together. Like the rest of this video, there's going to be people on completely opposite sides of this debate. There are some folks who think Snyder is the best thing to ever happen to these characters, who think Gunn is the worst thing to happen to DC, and are still holding out hope that the Snyderverse may someday be restored, which it won't, and will hate me and immediately dislike this video for me siding with Superman 2025. Then there's also people who think Gunn is exactly what DC needs and Snyder ruined the brand. And obviously there's also people like me who just love these characters and want the best for them, who enjoy what Snyder did but know it's time to move on and embrace this new era for the sake of the characters and brand. And that's currently where I am. I actually prefer Man of Steel over Superman 2025. If you look at my Letterboxd, if you watched my Superman movie ranking, you'll know that Man of Steel is my favorite Superman movie and one of my all-time favorite comic book movies. But when it comes to this particular round, I do think James Gunn's Superman does more for originality, memorability, and uniqueness. Snyder's vision was bold, daring, and totally different for the character. Not to mention, one way or the other, it's memorable. You either love it and think it's the pinnacle of the character, or you hated it and think it was a massive disservice to the character. Very few people seem to fall in the middle, and no one calls it forgettable, that's for sure. In a lot of ways, it pulls a lot from Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, like the tone and structure. Sure, Gunn pulls a ton from his own works, but the fact that he continues to have faith in the weirder sides of comic book history, continues to introduce most general audiences to characters they're not familiar with, continues to remain faithful to much of the lore while splicing in newer elements, and continues to have faith in the audience knowing and understanding what's going on, gives his movie the edge for me. So I'll be giving this 9th and final round and the crown to Superman 2025. Even though when comparing these movies as whole complete packages, I do personally prefer Man of Steel, but when breaking things down like this and comparing them in pieces, it quickly became clear that Superman 2025 did enough to take home the win. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my winner. While you're at it, don't forget to let me know who you would have picked to win each round and who your overall winner would have been. As a reminder, this is the revamped BAMTube Movies, and it is your one-stop for everything movies. Be it versus videos like this one, video essays, top 10s, ranking videos, tier list videos, I have it all and so much more, along with your daily nerdy news wrap-ups. A series of shorts where I keep you up to date on everything movies, gaming, and TV related. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that little bell icon so you don't miss a thing. As always, folks, I thank you all so very much for watching. Stay happy, healthy, and safe out there. From myself and the rest of the BAMTube team, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, and that's a wrap.